resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Hello, my Next Level friends. Sergio Gomez here, and I want to welcome you to a brand new episode of the Artist Next Level podcast. And today, before I get started, I want to remind you of the previous episode 109. It was my conversation with Renee Laverne-Rose. It's a really good one you do not want to miss. In that episode, we chatted about protecting yourself from online art scams. This is a really cool topic, something you need to know about as an artist. The episode has been downloaded a lot of times. It really went off the charts. It's been very popular right now, so you want to check that out. Don't miss it. Again, it's episode 109 with my good friend Renee Laverne-Rose. I also want to remind you that now you can download the Artist Survival Kit 2017 edition. It's an ebook on organization and productivity for working artists. So it's definitely something you want to check that out. It's absolutely free. You can download your complimentary copy at our website, www.theartistnextlevel.com. It's a completely free ebook. Check it out. In this ebook, I share the resources and tools that you need to have as an artist in order to manage your organization and also your productivity. It's pretty awesome. A lot of artists are getting it, so make sure you get your copy as well. And today I'm going to be sharing with you a great conversation with Ray Beldner. He is the founder of stARTup Art Fair. stARTup Art Fair is a unique contemporary art fair for independent artists. The Boutique Hotel Fair provides artists and art enthusiasts with direct access to the art world in 3 major cities right now across the country: San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Chicago. Its founder, Ray Beldner, is himself an artist, a sculptor, and a new media artist whose work has been exhibited nationally and internationally as well. He started this fair as a response to issues he faced as an artist in the 21st century art world. His work has been reviewed in several national publications, including Art in America, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times, and he can be found in many public and private collections, including the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery, the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, and the Oakland Museum of California. And I am super excited to have this conversation and share with you with Ray Beldner. Hi, Ray. How are you today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy that you are one of the or guests for today here at the Artist Next Level podcast, and you are joining us from
San Francisco, California.
Are you ready to take us to the next level?
I'm going to try.
Yeah. Well, Ray, thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. We are very excited to talk to you about stARTup Art Fair, which is going to come here to Chicago. We're going to talk about that. You are the founder of the fair. We're going to talk about how did that in the world started for you, what motivated you to create another art fair. We know there are many around the world happening right now. Yeah. And we are excited to have you here in Chicago for that. But before we have that conversation, I think we would love to know a little bit more about you, and particularly because you are also an artist and you are a sculptor. And I'm really fascinated with your work. I saw some of the projects and series that you have on your website. Really nice. So first, let's go with a little bit of your own story. If you can tell us maybe where you were born, how you became an artist, and what kind of work you do.
Yeah, thank you. So I was born and raised in San Francisco, and as I like to tell my mom, the nut hasn't fallen far from the tree. I've stayed in San Francisco. I went to the San Francisco Art Institute for my undergraduate degree in painting and printmaking, and then I went to Mills College, which is a little liberal arts college in Oakland, and I got my master's degree in sculpture there. And I've been, an exhibiting artist since the early 90s. I've shown in galleries in San Francisco, LA, New York. My work has been exhibited in solo and group exhibitions all around the country and in Europe and Asia. And I've taught art for many years in the Bay Area at the Art Institute and CCA. I taught at UC Santa Cruz and San Francisco State, UC Berkeley, and mostly I teach conceptually based practices and sculpture. And then the other thing that I often teach are professional practices for artists. So, besides having a passion for making art, I really have a passion for helping young artists build their careers. It's something I've always been interested in because when I was coming up as an artist, nobody told me, or there were no classes about how to be a professional artist. Nobody told me or taught me anything. I had a few mentors along the way, but as I like to tell my students, I learned about how to be an artist the same way I learned about sex. I picked it up in the streets. Nobody told me anything. I had to figure it out all on my own. And so when I started teaching a few years out of graduate school, I realized that the most important component to my teaching would be to be a mentor to my students, to help them not just make good work and be able to speak and write effectively about that good work, but to be able to go out into the world and have an exhibiting career if that's what they chose to do. So I spent a lot of time, just giving them insights into how the art world works and bringing lots of guest speakers into my classroom. Anyway, so it's that's all to say that that's how I got to Startup Art Fair was through my own work and my own practice as a teacher. I'm interested in helping artists to build and sustain their careers. My own work is sculpture, and it's also conceptual practices. So the work takes a lot of different forms, from digital stuff to more ephemeral work to installation, and I've done video and sound stuff.
One of the series that I really like in your website, your portfolio, is items I have taken from people I know. I'm really intrigued about that series. Can you tell me a little bit about that? That is pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It was preceded by another series of work that was called Counterfeit, which was a body of work where I remade famous works of art, but using currency, so sewing them together into these kind of quilts.
I saw that. That's amazing too.
Yeah, and I guess what I've always been interested as an artist to some degree. I'm interested in art history. I'm interested in where I came from as an artist and who my ancestors are. I have a real passion for conceptual art, and starting with Marcel Duchamp up to current day practitioners. Yeah. And so part of what's always interested me is this dichotomy in the art world between ideas and commerce. And sometimes they work hand in hand, and sometimes they work against each other. For example, it's like when I talk about art, when I teach students about art, I'm always talking about its artistic and historic value. But when you actually go out in the world, most people talk about art in terms of its economic value. So I did Counterfeit this work using currency because I wanted to highlight that idea that we tend to look at work as a form of currency, artwork as a form of currency. So I thought, well, by making it out of money, we can foreground that idea. Right. And then after I did that project for quite a while, I had a lot of money scraps left over. So I had boxes and boxes of parts of dollar bills, and I didn't know what to do with them. So I ground them all up into fine dust. So it's this green dust. So the second body of work, that items I've taken from people that I know, I thought I would try a different kind of appropriation. So rather than an artistic appropriation, I started appropriating small items of seemingly little economic value from people that I knew. So I'd go, if you invited me to your home for a dinner party, you might find some spoons missing, or a shot glass, or a little tchotchke off your shelf. So I just started collecting those and then combining them into these assemblages. And then in order to kind of obscure what they were and what their provenance was, I took all this money dust that I had ground up, and I flocked those pieces with money dust. So they look like these kind of green, brown, grayish green abstract blobs.
They look almost like powder coated with the heavy and textured, very, very sculptural. So so these are the actual objects then glued onto each other.
All epoxied together, then coated with one coat of resin, and then flocked with this money dust. And it's kind of interesting because the items themselves they have little economic value, but they're also covered with this, money dust, which is something we give great value to in this culture anyway. Even though, as we all know, money is just a piece of paper with a person's signature on it.
Right.
Has no intrinsic value.
Did you had anybody come and say, "Hey, that's where my sunglasses went"?
Yeah, well, it was funny. The first time I ever gave a presentation on that work, I was at the De Young Museum giving this lecture, and I had, I had never shown the work, and I put some slides up, and I was telling the same story. These are things I've taken. I try not to let people know what they are, and then somebody way in the back of the theater in the dark goes, "Hey, that's my fish hook," or whatever. I was
That's a great story.
"Oh, busted."
That's fabulous. I love that story. And at the end, that comes to also complete the work in itself. When it interacts with the public, and then some of those stories happen unplanned, and it just becomes kind of another layer in the conversation of that particular piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always looked for ways to include, more people in the work. I mean, when I did a lot of installation, one of the things I liked about doing site-specific installation is that I got to meet people that I wouldn't normally meet in my everyday life, because I would have to, if I was, videotaping a particular community, I have to go into this community and get to know the people in it. And so it really, for me, was a more expansive, enriching experience. And even when I make objects, I look for those opportunities to somehow bring in a larger, community, in my process. Right. So I'm not just, stuck in my studio all day, working away at one thing.
Exactly. That's fantastic. That's beautiful work. And would you mind sharing your websites or friends who might want to, after this conversation, would like to go check that out?
Yeah. It's just my name. It's raybeldner.com, www.raybeldner.com. So
fantastic.
I hope you go check it out. Yeah, I got to update it. So I got a lot of new stuff, but I just haven't put it on there.
Okay. Well, this is pretty cool. And I think the portfolio that you have up right now is very interesting, and there's plenty to see. So
good.
I'm sure our friends will find it quite interesting. So let's talk about Startup Art Fair. How in the world did you decided to launch into this particular journey? Starting an art fair is not easy. And
I know. So, I didn't see. If I had known it wasn't easy, I wouldn't have started it. It was my ignorance which allowed me to do it, and thank goodness I was ignorant. I mean, the reason I started it, I mean, I said a little bit before, is like I've always, I've worked with young artists trying to help them start and maintain their career. So I've always had a passion for helping artists. And I found myself at some point, several years ago, where I had lost all my gallery relationships. I had, like I said, I had a gallery in LA and New York and San Francisco, and one by one, one retired, one went out of business, and one I parted ways with. And so I was looking personally to find a way to get my work back out there without going through a gallery, because let's face it, galleries are I mean, they'll never disappear, but they are definitely hitting hard times, and especially in San Francisco, where rents are really high. It's the art scene is very diverse here in geographically, so spaces are all over the city. So, but a lot of galleries have gone out of business because of three factors, I think. One is high rents in urban areas. The other is the internet has democratized to a large degree art buying and selling, and it's made galleries somewhat obsolete. And then the third thing is art fairs. Art fairs have completely revolutionized and changed the way that people buy art and people sell art. It's become a much more an event-driven thing. So as an artist, I was looking to get back into the art fair scene without having to go through a gallery. Most art fairs are for galleries and not for individual artists. Right. So I found very few. This is just a few years ago, 2014. I found very few art fairs where I could represent myself as an artist. It's more common in Europe, and I found some fairs there that seemed interesting. But I was really stuck to find something here in San Francisco or even in the United States that wasn't a ripoff, wasn't cheesy. I mean, there are these art fairs, and they're either art fairs in the park or they're traditional booth fairs. They're very expensive. They're pretty cheesy. They're pretty much pay for play. Whoever applies gets in, and they're quite expensive. And so I was looking for an alternative, and I couldn't find it. So I decided, well, how hard could it be to start an art fair?
Exactly. Here's an opportunity.
You just rent a hall and call your friends up, and everybody comes running with a check. I called up a friend of mine, Steve Zavatero, who's used to run a gallery with his wife called Mark Zavatero here in San Francisco. It was one of my favorite galleries, excellent gallery. It went out of business. High rents forced them out of business. They decided not to open a brick and mortar space anymore. And I knew he was kind of looking for an opportunity. So I called him, and he's like, I love the idea. Let's do it. And so we, founded this fair in San Francisco. It was our first iteration in 2015.
Okay.
And we decided from the very beginning that we wanted it to be like an anti-art fair. We didn't want it to be exclusive. We didn't want it to be a place where people felt uncomfortable. We really wanted an inviting, fun, cool atmosphere. And so the first thing we decided was having a booth fair wasn't the way to go. So we looked more at different models, like a hotel fair, like Aqua in Miami, and other hotel fairs. There used to be a great one in LA called the Chateau Marmont that I did as an artist. So we decided a hotel. We found a hotel that we loved here in San Francisco called the Hotel del Sol. It's part of the Joie de Vivre hotel group. Very hip, very fun, motor inn with a pool in the middle, cool. In 2 levels where everything faces into this courtyard, into the pool. And that's how we started with that idea to make it fun and cool and approachable. And pretty quickly we realized it was an idea that a lot of artists loved and a lot of artists need. It's certainly not for everybody to do an art fair. It's certainly not, some work is not appropriate for a fair, or some artists' temperament aren't appropriate for a fair. They just don't want to sit there all weekend while thousands of people come through their room. But for the artists that, love that, can do that well, it can be a real help to their career. And we realized that it's not just limited to San Francisco. We pretty quickly took the idea down to Los Angeles. We found a really fun hotel called the Highland Gardens Hotel that is in Hollywood. And we did a fair there in 2016. That was our first LA fair.
Great.
And then that same year we thought, well, it did so well in LA. What's the next city? And unanimously, by talking to artists and other people in the industry, people are like, Chicago. That's where you got to go. Chicago has only one gallery fair, and it's an excellent one. It could really benefit by having a satellite fair. There's a ton of independent artists in Chicago. There's a real tradition of DIY in Chicago, artists opening up their own spaces. And it just seemed like a natural fit for us. So we took it last year to a hotel it's now called the Cambria. It was called the Mile North last year. It's right around the corner from the MCA.
Okay. So that was last year, which was the first kind of iteration of the show here in Chicago, correct? And so this year will be your second one. Our second.
And we moved to a different hotel. The Cambria couldn't host us because they're under construction. And so we went to the Acme Hotel on East Ohio Street, and they were someone who wanted to work with us last year. So we went to them and we made a deal with them. So we're going to be at the Acme Hotel this year.
Fantastic. So what differentiates this fair from other fairs? When you decided to open up this fair, so when you set up your parameters of what this will look like, what were some of the main goals to say, well, our startup art fair is going to be known for this?
Yeah. Well, here's my take on it. I mean, we certainly our goal in making the fair was to make it very artist centric, because I'm an artist and my former partner Steve, is a dealer but loves artists. So we're very artist centric. We're very hands on with our artists. We don't, we're not just like, here's your room, goodbye.
Here's the key. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time with professional development leading up to the fair. So there's a lot of younger artists that want to do a fair but really have never done it. They don't know what it entails. So I spend a lot of time both as a group and individually talking with them and prepping them for all the various aspects of the fair. So we do that. I think that, what makes us unique as well is the partnerships we have with all the hotels. Our hotels are really fun. They're really hip. They're really funky. They're really comfortable. I think that's what makes it really interesting. The other thing that's different from our fair than other artist fairs is we don't take a commission on sales. So the artist pays one fee. That fee covers everything from the stay in the room to their parking to their breakfast to all the marketing and all the other things that go into the fair, and then every sale that they make, every connection they make is theirs 100%. We decided we didn't want to be art dealers. We wanted to be art fair promoters, where we promote artists and let them do the dealing themselves. The other thing that's unique about our fair and has been evolving in the last couple of years is we really, we have generally somewhere between 40 and 50, exhibiting artists who pay. Okay. But because we partner with a lot of nonprofits, anywhere between 4 and 8 nonprofits at each fair, we bring in another 40, 50 artists through these nonprofit partners who don't pay anything. So we try very much to have the widest range possible of art forms represented at the fair. So you won't just see painting and drawing and prints and photography. We also have artists who work in social practices, who do installation, video, performance, sound art. And a lot of those artists come to us through our nonprofit partners. Like, for example, this year in Chicago, we're going to be partnering with Experimental Sound Studio, and they're going to be doing some sound projects in our common spaces with artists. Last year, we worked with Defibrillator, and they did a whole series of performances in their room. And I think like 14 different performance artists worked over the weekend. And then we worked with we're going to work again with Hyde Park Art Center, and we're going to work with Chicago Art Department, another small nonprofit. And those artists are going to be doing primarily installations in their room. So I think that's what differentiates us. It's not the same kind of commercial crap that you see at art fairs. We have, really challenging work in all genres. And I'm very proud of that part of the fair, actually, and we put a lot of energy into it.
No, that's fantastic. And that's, very refreshing to hear, too, that this is an art fair run by an artist, someone who understands the artist's mind. I've been to fairs, artist-run fairs, in which, unfortunately, sometimes you walk in and, as soon as you walk in, you want to get out because it's chaotic. There's no sense of direction in the work. And also, I've been to fairs where, unfortunately, the art fair promised a lot of promotion and things, and you walk in and there's nobody there. And this happens quite often in Miami because there's so many art fairs all at the same time. But if the art fair is in the wrong location, and if they didn't do their marketing right, that you feel sorry. It's like, well, these artists are here every day for 8 hours, and there's only a handful of people walking in. That is really heartbroken.
It's hard. I mean, I have to say, and that's why I would never do a fair in Miami or New York. There's way too much competition. There's all these little fairs. I mean, what are there in Miami? 25 fairs now?
Yeah, it's insane.
There's just no way that you could do a fair and get the kind of attention that you need. It's for us. It's far better to be in a secondary market like San Francisco or Chicago. And we do align ourselves with other with other fairs as a satellite, but really here in San Francisco, there's only one other fair going on when we're doing ours, and in Chicago there's Expo, and in LA there's usually 1 or 2 fairs going on. So we're not lost in the fray, and we do try to partner with our sister fairs as much as we can in terms of our marketing and other types of cooperation. And we've been lucky in Chicago because Tony Carmen, who runs Expo, has been incredibly generous. Really cool. and very wonderful in helping promote the fair.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean too. I mean, the other problem with art fairs is they tend to be, like you said, chaotic. The work's all over the place, and that was the other thing that we wanted to do from the very beginning is have a jury. And so we have a jury of 6 art professionals, and it's always 2 art dealers who it's always two art dealers, 2 curators, and then 2 well-known artists. And that way we get a kind of a range of opinion and ideas. And then I think for the public, that, and for the artist, that when you get in, through a very strict vetting process, so that, only the best of the applicants get in. And I think that makes for a much better fair. And then there's other ways I think you could have a diversity of, of work, but also have a really tighter kind of curated experience. So we do curate the public spaces as well. And, we try to make the whole experience easy to maneuver for people.
Fantastic. Now, I have a question for an artist who might be listening to this podcast and might not picture their work within the hotel setting, within a room.
Yeah.
What kinds of things can an artist do in terms of installation of their work? What are the parameters?
So it's interesting.
An artist might be thinking, do I fit into this or not? How does that work?
If you've never seen a hotel fair or you've never done one, then sometimes it's hard to get your head around it. Like, how do I bring my work into a hotel room and make it look like an exhibition? And so everybody treats it a different way when they go in there. We have lots of limitations in the hotel room, and the main limitations are we can't put nails in the wall, and we can't move the furniture out of the room. Now, that being said, artists are very creative and inventive people, so they've figured out lots of ways around it. The primary way about the hanging is if there's any hooks left on the wall from the hotel art, you can use those. But also we use these 3M command hooks hangers, and they work really well. They don't use nails. They're stick-on, but they come off without peeling off the paint. And they've been engineered in this very particular way, and we've used them for the last 6 fairs. They're fantastic. I've never seen one fail. They have weight limits, of course, but you can also gang them up. But then people do other really funny things like, big art, they'll lean on the bed, or they'll lean on the floor, or they'll lean on a table, or they bring in a plinth, or, sometimes artists are just like, well, my work is so heavy. Like, we have an artist named Emily Madigan who does these incredible taxidermy heads. She uses taxidermy forms, and then she covers them with all this bling and shiny stuff. They're super heavy, so she brings in sheets of plywood that are painted white, 1/2 inch, and she just leans them against the wall. Then she can nail or screw anything she wants in the wall. But then, other people do things like they'll take every stick of furniture out and shove it in the bathroom, so then the room's completely empty. Or they'll take the beds and they'll stack them on top of each other and then put a piece of wood on top and then make it a display area. Or they'll flip them on their side and they'll make it like a little shelf. So everybody treats the room differently. I mean, some people, they want the room to be cleared out and look like a clean exhibition space, and other people want to make it look more like a home lived-in space, and they'll just leave everything as is, and they'll put the art on the walls, but then they'll leave the beds and the furniture, and maybe they'll put a portfolio out on the bed that you can leaf through. And so everybody does it a different way. The only thing I could say is anyone who's listening to this podcast is to go to our website, which is startupartfair.com, and look at our Instagram feed and some of our images, and you'll see tons of examples of what people did in the rooms. So, yeah, I mean, we had one gal in San Francisco who, when I walked in, she kept her room closed the whole time she was installing. And when I finally walked in the room on opening day, I opened the door. Every surface was covered with white foam core, the ceiling, the walls, and the floor. It was a completely white box. She did a sound installation.
Oh, wow.
She had 2 little sculptures and a sound piece, and then in the bedroom she had a video.
That is a good.
And there was not a stick of furniture to be had anywhere. And I had a kind of a mini panic attack. And I said,
"What happened to my furniture?"
"You can't take the furniture out." She goes, "Don't worry, it's still here." And I'm like, "Where is it? I don't see it. It's not in the closet. It's not in the bathroom." And she points to this wall and she goes, "You see that wall? That's a fake wall." So she built a fake wall in front of the other wall.
That's
and she
crazy.
basically entombed all the furniture behind that wall. Oh my God, it was so everybody does different things. It's so fun to see, actually. It's one of my favorite parts of the fair is to see how inventive people become in terms of how they display their work, and they light it too. I mean, the other big thing is lighting. You've got to bring in your own lights if you want it to be really well lit.
Right. And something that's cool that I love about fairs too, and especially in like hotel settings too, is that the space is kind of a living space. It doesn't have to stay the same as how you started. You know, you can change it every day. You can, you can play with the space. You can see how people react to the space in different days. And that is pretty fun too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had artists, they change the room every day. They'll rehang it completely differently.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the great thing. And that's why, I think that we're different than other art fairs. We give the artists a lot of leeway. We don't, we do help them curate if they want help to curate. We do give suggestions about what is a good hanging or whatever. But if they want to do something really out of the box, something that's really wild and crazy, I'm all for it. Just do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, since we're talking about this, helping the artists kind of with these kinds of things, what other services does Startup Art Fair provide to the artists in terms of helping them out with maybe with the marketing or with how to promote their their
so
work,
we do so leading up to the fair, there's lots of communication with the artist on several different things. One is on promoting your work pre-fair, like how do we partner with the artist in terms of the promotion of the fair. The other is kind of preparing for the fair kind of physically, like what items do you need. So we have a whole checklist of things that you would potentially need at the fair. And then the third thing is what is the third thing? Kind of like art fair etiquette, like what happens at the fair, how you do, like what if somebody asks you for a discount? What if somebody wants payments? Do you have the ability to take credit cards? Because otherwise we can provide that service.
Wonderful.
So we have a lot of that leading up to the fair. And then at the fair, before we open, we have a kind of a giant meeting where artists can kind of ask a lot more questions or, any concerns that come up, at the last second we can talk about. And then we usually have a couple of curators on staff. They're either going to be, some of our advisors or our jurors will be there the days before the fair to help artists curate their rooms if they need help. And a lot of artists, strangely enough, do need help curating their room because they tend to want to put too much work in it. And we're always trying to get it to kind of look a little bit cleaner. So we do provide that. The other services, I guess you can call it, that we provide as a fair in general is we have an app now, a mobile app, where visitors can log in and they can see the artist's work before the fair, and then during the fair they can see the artist's work. So if you're in an artist's room, for example, and see a painting you like but the artist is too busy to talk to you about it, you could scan it and all the information will come up on the app. So it has image recognition. And then the work is also available after the fair on the app, and payments can be taken through the app. And that same app is connected to our website where we have a buy art page. So I think that's the other thing is we try to promote our artists 24/7, 365. It's not just, a relationship for 3 days. I want the relationship to continue all year round. And we do that by trying to continue to promote and sell their work in these various channels throughout the year. The other thing we just started recently too is we're doing kind of I guess it's an art advisory service because a lot of people come to me and say, I really love all these artists. How do I get in touch with them? I have a project. So I've been acting kind of as a clearinghouse and art advisor, I guess. And so I help to promote my artists for other projects in the real world after the fair ends as well. So I think that's kind of one of the value adds about being a startup artist is it's a longer term relationship than just an art fair relationship. We do partnerships with with other businesses as well to provide services for our artists. So, for example, for Chicago, moo.com is giving all of our artists free business cards and postcards for the fair. 3M gives us a fair amount of those command hangers free. So, because they're super expensive. I mean, it's like, I think it's like $4 for a pack of 3 hangers.
Wow.
So 3M gives us a bunch so we can give each of our artists a bag of them.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we do a lot of in-kind stuff. We did a thing with Flax Art and Design in San Francisco. They gave our artists all discount cards for art materials, stuff like that. So, we're always looking for ways to partner with businesses where the businesses either can help underwrite an artist room or can help with materials and services.
Right. And I think those are the small things that make a big difference too. Sometimes, those are little things, but you have to think about them. And that shows that you are caring for the artist, that you're caring not only for the fair, and I'm here in town for like 3 days and then goodbye, I got your check, and hopefully you did well and it's gone. But is this long-term relationship? Is this also providing the artist with tools, with resources, with ideas? And at the end of the day, I think, for the artists who are participating in the fair and they're investing and they feel that they are being supported by the venue. And I think that is very important.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. It's like I try to do what I would want as an artist. It's like what is the ideal art fair in my eyes? And we're getting there. We're getting closer to the ideal. But I mean, and just in really basic terms, artists are our customers. They're our primary customers of the fair. Yeah, it's true. We need to bring in buyers and art consultants and curators, and we spend a lot of time courting people, professionals in the field to come to the fair. But really, my primary goal is to always take care of the artists, because that's who we're serving. We're serving artists. So, yeah, we're always looking for those opportunities. I'm lucky I have a good team. We're a small company, but I have a really good business development team and PR and marketing team.
That's fantastic. That is wonderful, Ray. I'm so happy that we're having this conversation and that giving us all this length of details, which are very important. And so hopefully some of the artists who maybe listening to the podcast, maybe on the fence, they can really take time to further check into this. Which I am really happy to say that the deadline has been extended and just in time for our podcast. That is very cool. So tell us a little about the deadline. What's the process for submission?
Yeah, so the original deadline to apply was July 7th, which was Friday, and that passed. And of course, I got a flurry of emails from artists saying, I need more time. And so I opened it up through the weekend, but then we just decided to go ahead and give it a full week of extension. And we've sent out emails and promoted on social media. But now artists can go to the website, startupartfair.com, click on the Chicago apply link. And it's a pretty simple application. It's through a company called Submittable. It's, all your basic information, a resume, 10 images, up to 10 images, a short proposal, what you propose to do in the room. And that's pretty much it. Once the submissions, the application deadline closes next week, our jurors will take a look, make their selections. And by hopefully the third week in July, we'll have our roster of artists and we can start promoting and preparing for the fair.
Fantastic. And in terms, correct me if I'm wrong, but an artist can submit as a solo or a 2-person or as a small group, correct?
Yeah, I mean, in order to keep costs down, now let's talk about money, because that's a big thing for artists. This fair is not inexpensive. No art fairs are cheap, cheap. Booth fees run from about $3,000 for a regular room to $4,500. Now, it sounds like a lot of money. For some artists, though, they sell 1 or 2 paintings and they're pretty much covered their costs. But what we do ask or can ask artists to consider if they want to be involved, but that seems like too much, is to apply in groups, apply in a group of 2 or 3 artists to share costs.
Great.
We also do payment plans so that you don't have to come up with all of it right at one time. We have like a payment plan of you could pay all at once, you could pay half and half, you could pay 4 payments leading up to the fair. we've been trying to find ways to bring the cost of the fair down through sponsorships and different things. And over time, I hope that becomes the case. But right now, in order to just make this work, right. This is the cost of doing a fair. The one thing I feel very good about, you asked me what's different about our fair. The other thing that's different about our fair is we actually are one of the cheapest art fairs for independent artists out there. When you look at what you get per square foot and how much linear wall space you get, the cost of our fair is exponentially cheaper than other artist-run fairs. So we feel good about that. But we're also, we work with some nonprofits and some corporate sponsors who do also underwrite individual artist rooms. Like I alluded to this earlier, we do have some artists who come in on what we call a quote-unquote scholarship, and they get their room underwritten. And there probably will be one or two artists this fair who get underwritten by one of our corporate sponsors.
Fantastic. Very cool. Well, Ray, that's pretty awesome, and thanks for providing that information. And I have one last question before we close for today, and you can share the website and how we can find Startup Art Fair and so forth. Is at the end of the day, once art fair is finished from a particular city, how do you evaluate the fair in terms of did we succeeded as a fair or not?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, and it's something that we struggle with trying to figure out the metrics on each fair. And we poll all of our artists to find out how much they sell. We poll all of the vendors we work with and the nonprofits to find out what their experience was, not only how much they sell, but who came through. And so each fair we try to get a sense of these different stats. But in my mind, a good fair is one where we get a fair amount of pre and post fair press for what we do. The artists sell a good amount of work. Like in San Francisco, the amount of work we sold was, there are some people that sell very little and some people that sell an enormous amount, but on average, the average room was more, per room, the amount of work we sold was more than the room cost. So that means that everybody's netting more money than they've paid. And then the other thing that we try to that we try to find out, which is a lot harder to find out, is who in the art world came through. Who are those collectors, curators, art writers that came through? So we keep our eyes open, and we also depend on our artists to tell us. So a good fair is when you get a lot of art world people, you make good sales, and you get good press. Last year in Chicago, I think we did, for our first year, pretty well, considering. We got some incredible articles. I don't think our sales were as good as they are in San Francisco, but they're pretty good for the first year. And then we had some interesting people come through from the art world. And I'm hoping that, that increases this year.
Exactly.
But that's a really good question. I think it's a question all artists should ask, actually. I just had an artist tell me recently he did another artist fair, and I said, how was it? And he said, I sold some work. He goes, but nobody came to my room that was of any consequence. And he said, you guys do a much better job bringing the art world in. And that's the other thing I want to say is that, when you think about cost versus value, the cost of doing fairs is expensive, but what's the value? What do you get out of it? We've talked about some of the perks that the artists get, but the other value, I think, and the greatest value of art fairs is the connections you make into the art world. And that is probably, it should be every artist's number one reason to do a fair, not to make sales. Sales are great, and hopefully you can make sales and cover your costs, but really, I think the reason to do it is because it puts you in front of those art world people that you can't do on your own. We bring in more people, more curators and art consultants, designers, and art writers in 3 days than you can meet in 2 years on your own. And I think that's the value of the art fair, really. And we do, like I said, we keep in touch with our artists. And what I find is a lot of artists say, I didn't sell a lot at the fair, but in the subsequent weeks and months after, I made a ton of sales. I got into a gallery. I had a museum show. So the after effects of the fair are very long term.
Exactly.
Some people do great at the fair, but then other people, it's a slower thing, but eventually you see the value in it over time. And if you do multiple fairs, if you come back every year, then people start to see you and know, oh, there's that person who does that work that I love, and there's some benefit to doing it, more than one time.
Right. Absolutely. You are absolutely right on that. And I can testify to that too. Some of the fairs I've done is sometimes years later, I've been getting still opportunities from people I have met and things like that. So you just never know. It's not just how much I sold on that weekend, but, the contacts I made. And also very important to remind our friends to follow up on those contacts. Because people come through those doors, sometimes by the thousands, and you make contacts, but if you don't never follow up, sometimes nothing happens. You have to also.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's part of the education we do with the artists. Is we after very the fair important. Right away we send them an email and we say, look, this is the time now in this week to write to everybody that you saw that you got on your mailing list and thank them and follow up on every little thing, because that is how you become. And in general, it's not just an art fair, but that's how you become a successful artist. You need to follow up on those things, and you can't just retreat back into the studio and hope that people find you.
Yeah, but they'll remember, after they see so many other artists. But just that one little conversation that you may have with a person, it could just make huge difference in the long run, which is pretty
it's incredible. I just had an artist from LA who did LA in the very first year in 2016, and she literally last month said, oh my God, Ray, I just got off the phone with this curator or consultant who I met at STARTup 2016. Now this is a year and a half later now, and now she's is doing a giant commission for a hotel. From this one little conversation of this person who she didn't even really think cared anything. She just kept her on her mailing list, and she came back to her and she's like, we're going to do this thing. So
awesome. And one of the great things, I think, just to close with this, is that in Chicago, like you say, we have the companion fair to this, which is Expo Chicago, happening at the same time. So, as people are right now in the art fair mode during that weekend, if just a few blocks away, they can go to STARTup Art Fair and meet some of these up-and-coming and young artists too. And it's just a great combination because it's a sister fair to Expo, who's already bringing a lot of the traffic. And I think it's just a great idea. It's wonderful to have it here in Chicago. And I'm so happy that, it was successful first year. We're hoping for a great second year for you guys. And we'll be there supporting you and supporting all the artists as well. And, I just want to congratulate you for that. And wishing you the best on this effort, because I think it's really, really cool. Out of this conversation, I think I have no doubt in my mind that this is a really nice fair for Chicago.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being on your podcast and getting to talk a little bit about the fair. And I also wanted to say, if anybody wants to reach me, I'm very accessible via email, ray@startupartfair.com. So if anyone has questions, they can totally email or even text me. My phone number is on the website as well. I'm very accessible. But speaking of Expo, we are within walking distance of Expo. It's like 8 blocks away, and we all of our exhibiting artists get free VIP passes to Expo Chicago as well. One of the other perks that we've made with them. So they in some ways they get 2 fairs for the price of one.
Fantastic. And what I'm gonna do is, and I'm gonna commit right now to visit the fair and select 2 artists to feature in this podcast. How's that?
Oh, that would be wonderful. I'm sure they would love that.
To feature their stories, feature their work. That would be pretty cool.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, Ray, could you please just share your website one more time for where an artist can go find out about this STARTup Art Fair, and remind them of the deadline that's coming up. That's very important.
Yeah. So the deadline is Friday, July 14th at midnight to apply. And you apply by going to www.startupartfair.com. Click on the Chicago link, and you'll see the application button. And if you want to reach me, it's ray@startupartfair.com. So
Very cool. Thank you so much, Ray, for your time, for taking time. I know you're pretty busy right now lining things up for the Chicago Fair, because before you know it, it's going to be already September.
I know. It's happening so quick.
And it's happening quickly. And thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing your story, for sharing how the fair started, your vision for STARTup Art Fair, and that that's really fantastic. I just want to thank you for that. Any last words you want to say before we close?
Well, I'm just really looking forward to being in Chicago again. It's one of my favorite cities next to San Francisco, and I hope people come out for the fair. And if they don't participate, at least come and support the artists that we'll be exhibiting.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ray. Again, I want to thank all our listeners too. Make sure you go and check out the website for STARTup Art Fair. Please take care of that deadline that's coming up pretty soon. Don't forget about that. And if you like this episode, or if you are thinking of other artists who could benefit from this conversation, please do share this link with them as well, so that they can also listen to Ray and the story behind STARTup Art Fair. So thanks again for being with us, and we'll see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.